As I stand here to speak about innovation and in publishing, and the whole idea is how do you leverage on technology to spread hope? And as I was thinking about the question of what leveraging is all about, leveraging is about taking the utmost advantage of something. So when we say, how do you leverage on technology to spread hope? Basically, we are saying, how do you take advantage of technology? Because it's here with us. You cannot run away from it. And the earlier you accept that reality, the better for your publishing. And there are so many ways in which technology can be of great help and a great tool. And the question that I want to ask ourselves is, how do we use technology to amplify our message of hope in the world? Especially because technology allows us to go beyond our borders and indeed so many other reasons. But as we speak about technology, I don't want us to be lost in the fact that we are speaking about the message of hope. That for us, what's important is actually not the technology, because quite often we focus on the technology itself. It frustrates us because it keeps on changing all the time. But we forget that what's very important is the hope and the message that we have. And so technology only comes in as an enabler for us. It only allows us to communicate better. It allows us to reach more people. It allows us to go to places. I like what Bishop Lesuit said yesterday. Books go to places that you cannot go. But technology even goes further to places that you can never, ever get. And so that, to me, is an encouragement for publishers, for writers, to understand that we can harness technology, we can use it to amplify and share a message of hope. We can touch lives of countless individuals around the globe. Even though you are in a remote place or a difficult country, you could have a message that could reach as many people. So I want you to join me this morning in the next couple of minutes as we explore what it actually means. Where does technology and publishing intersect? And how can we use them for the right ways to influence people, to educate them, to connect them with the message of hope? And I believe this comes not even at a better time than now. We all experienced COVID-19. I believe everybody who is here had an experience with COVID-19 one way or another. The fact that we could not be able to move around as we were used to, and yet we could be able to use technology to connect with each other. We were able to use technology to have our worship services and be part of a community of believers. And technology becomes an enabler. So how do we get to that point where we appreciate? I want us to reflect on three ways in which publishing has been powerful. As you think about publishing, I want you to think about three ways that publishing has been very powerful. To a great extent, we can talk about publishing as an opportunity to disseminate knowledge. If you think about the school systems that we use, they are so dependent on publishing. They are so dependent on someone putting ideas together, packaging them, and allowing people who are not next to you to be able to access. So if you think about how publishing has transformed the world, I don't think of any other way than thinking about publishing being a force that has been used. And when you talk about a force can be used for good, it can be used for evil. And so when we talk about disseminating knowledge, we are not just talking about the academic world. And I've been privileged to be part of that world. And I've enjoyed being part of that world. But there is much more in terms of disseminating knowledge. Publishing indeed has been a profound force that has shaped human history. And we can look at through the centuries and see how that publishing has been a vehicle for sharing knowledge, stories, and ideas. And we could be able to think about many others, and we'll explore a couple of them. Think about the Gutenberg, for those of you who know about the Gutenberg press, and how it was able to ensure that more people could get knowledge and information. Think about the days when books were only handwritten, so if you needed a copy of a book, you don't go to a photocopier and photocopy that page. You literally had to write it down. But the fact that now we are able to have many copies of one book or one idea, that helps you to understand how publishing has helped. But secondly, we are talking about publishing being an opportunity to spread hope. I was looking at the Bible, and it occurred to me that if you have a Bible in the King James Version, the word hope appears 130 times in 121 verses. If you have the New King James Version, it's 143 times in 134 verses. If you have the English Standard Version, ESV, the word hope occurs 151 times in 144 verses. And in the NIV, it is 167 times in 159 verses. And that significantly helps me realize that really the Bible itself is a message of hope, if you are to think of it. Look at Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. We find God creating a perfect world. Everything was in harmony. Things were working right as they were intended. And then God creates us, the human beings, in chapter 3. And what do we do? As always, we mess up the good world that God had created. And then what you see coming up later on is a message of hope, God trying to reconcile man back to himself. And he continues to do that to date. And I think that gives us that idea that the Bible itself is a book of hope. And as Christian publishers, people who are Christian writers, we have the best gift that we can ever give to the world, and that is hope. Because if you look at the world that we are in, everybody is hopeless in one way or another. If it's not the economy, it's their politics. If it's not their politics, it's something else. But there are many things that are not working right. And so publishing has been a great tool for not only disseminating knowledge, but it has also been a great tool for spreading hope. And I hope and pray that that will be ourselves, that we will be counted amongst people who are spreading hope. But thirdly, publishing is a way of preserving our cultural heritage. And when you look at the historical heritage of nations, there is a way in which we ensure that that knowledge is preserved. Yesterday, we spent a couple of minutes with Dr. Kasambala, and we were looking at some proverbs from one of the tribes in Zambia, sorry, not Lusaka, and just trying to see what wisdom we can learn from those as leaders. If someone did not preserve that cultural heritage, the wisdom that is spread through proverbs in Africa, we wouldn't possibly not have been able to have something yesterday to talk about. So the power of publishing. But as we talk about the power of publishing, let me take you a little bit down the memory lane, just in case. I know there are some of you who are looking at those pictures and you cannot possibly tell what the red thing is, and it is fine. If you don't know what that red thing is, it used to be called a telephone booth. Before the existence of mobile phone technologies, if you wanted to make a call, you possibly had to look for one. And like where I grew up, there was none close because I grew up in the countryside. So we only saw those when we went to the town, the closest town near where I lived. Very few people in my country, and I think it's to a great extent also to a bigger part of the continent of Africa. Many people never owned the second piece of equipment that is there. Was very important. A phone in the house, that was a luxury for the preserve and a preserve for the few, you know. Either you're very rich or you're a politician or something like that. or you're a civil servant and you can get your way around. Um, but what I'm trying to paint the picture is, that's the world that technology was then. And what has happened, especially in Africa, is most people never lived into those phases of technology development. They jumped right into the cell phone technology. And moments and moments I've been talking to publishers, and I've been privileged when Rose was introducing me, I'm privileged to serve, especially with the United Bible Societies, and an opportunity that allows me to connect with Bible societies in 154 countries around the world, serving over 200 regions around the world. And so we have these conversations. And the more I talk to publishers around the world, the more I feel that they are living in the telephone booth when the world has moved to the cell phone. And I think, unfortunately so, and that's not the good news for you, it's actually bad news. Unfortunately, that's even more prevalent among Christian publishers. We are living in the old era. And I'm saying that is gone. I've had people come to me and say, oh, I can't get my books to the bookstore. And I said, which bookstores? That era is gone. And if you're looking to have bookstores alive and vibrant as they were in 2000s, in 1990s, I am sorry, I'm a bearer of bad news for you. That's not coming back. It's gone. It's in the past. We've got to ask ourselves, where is the world as far as publishing and writing is concerned? And we need to position ourselves into that space so that our message of hope, this message that we have, great message, is not lost in the medium, because technology is only but a medium. You must start by having a message. And so that picture was great for me because it helped me as I speak about the next slide, where I'm talking about the digital revolution and the impact it has had on publishing. And what has happened over time is that the publishing landscape has gone through a lot of profound transformation, especially with the advent of the digital revolution. This revolution has defined many things. It has defined the way we create content. It has defined the way we distribute content. It has defined the way people consume the content. So everything has been redefined, and that's what I'm saying. If you are living in the era of the telephone booth, that has been refined already. Even the few that used to be around the city, I think our city council realized they were possibly a hideout for criminals, so they took them away. So they no longer exist. We don't even have them available anywhere. But the idea is that things have changed. And I want to talk about 4 things that have been revolutionized as far as book publishing is concerned. One is that we have a new model for publishing. I always say this, that when I joined publishing over 20 years ago, the publisher was the single most important person you needed to talk to. In fact, publishers were not easily accessible, especially in the West. They even had what we call literal agents. You couldn't just go to a publisher because then they needed someone to be able to approach them on your behalf. You know, listen to your idea, think this idea is great, and it can sell millions of copies, and so they present your manuscript. That was then, but times have changed. And now we are in a time where publishing has been democratized. I see many people in my city who call themselves publishers, and then I ask them a few questions and I realize they have no idea what actually they are talking about. Why? Because there is democratization of the publishing space by technology. You can pick your book and write anything. It doesn't matter whether it has any value, and there are even templates that are available online that you can do automated, whether it's an automated ebook or automated design, and in a moment you have a book. Publishing has changed, and we must appreciate that way. And we must find ourselves then asking ourselves, what is the new role of a publisher? Previously, in some of the presentations when I use an imagery of a bridge and a river. To a great extent, when I was growing up, publishers were the kind of the bridge that connected the authors, the writers who are on one side of the river, and we had book distributors and readers on the other side. Then all of a sudden, something happened and the river dried, maybe because of climate change, so the river no longer exists. And so in the end now, what we have is that everybody has access to everybody. The publisher can access the writers can access the distributors can access whoever. And so as a publisher, then you must ask yourself, what is your role? And I keep on saying, for me as a publisher, and I enjoy being that space, I wear dual hats. I'm a publisher, but I also do write. As a publisher, I say the role of a publisher is to be a value add. You're just a part of the value add in the process, in the chain. And so you must ask yourself, what value can I add to people who are getting published? If you can't answer that question, you are not going to survive. Publishing has changed completely, and a new model must be established. That is why if you visit Publishing Institute of Africa website, you realize we say, our slogan is publishing customized to meet your needs. That every person who walks to our door, we have a conversation with you and we find out where you need help. And we don't have to do something that will not add value to you, because it's about adding value to the process and not taking control of the process simply for the sake of it. And so publishing has changed, a new model exists. Technology has also brought about the evolution of ebooks. We may want to run away from them, but ebooks are here with us. They are here to stay. I know that sometimes people are worried. Well, what will happen? And print books. I have good news for you. Print books are still doing well, by the way. And they are all statistics. When I looked at the report of book sales and distribution in the US last year, 2023, no, 2022, sorry. Only 7% of the total book sales were actually ebooks. And that simply tells you there is space for what you're doing. However, I put a disclaimer there. It's just not any kind of a book that is simply because it's print. There must be something different about the book that is in print that will attract people to get to it. And the question is what kind? And we'll be talking about that in a moment. Ebooks are here and they are helpful. As you possibly know, right now with my gadget right here, I'm able to carry hundreds of thousands of books just on this. So when I travel, I don't have to worry about weight and limits and all that. There are spaces where this becomes very important. But there are times also when I want to have that physical book and open that page and feel the smell of the page, and that makes a big difference. As I watched people walk into the book tables yesterday and just seeing people enjoy, you can see the joy of it as they hold this book to themselves. So there is a lot of space. And I mean, if we only talk about 7% so far, and that is the United States, that possibly tells you the statistics will be very different in our world. Although when I attended Digital Book World last year, and they brought that statistics, especially from the president of the International Publishers Association, I had an opportunity to talk to her, and I said, what you don't realize is that 7% that you are crediting to US distribution as my little percentage, because if I'm in Africa and I have a credit card, I will buy books of the US or the UK. So that 7% is actually not totally the US statistics. But what I'm trying to say is there is an opportunity for ebooks. But there's also audiobooks that are coming in very handy. And I'll talk about ebooks and why they are necessary. It's actually the fastest growing segment as far as book publishing is concerned, in fact, in terms of growth as an opportunity for authors and publishers. And there are so many opportunities for you to do that. Audiobooks bring in stories to life, especially when they are well narrated. And so they are able to engage and enhance the readers. It enhances their experience when they have audiobooks, sorry. And equally important is the myriad of online platforms that have come up. There are numerous of them, online platforms that have revolutionized how we publish. We can think about them. I can give you a whole list of them. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to compile a list of all the online platforms that can be able to help you. Either you're looking at when you're writing, whether it's when you're editing. There are sometimes, for example, when you're writing and you use Grammarly. I don't know how many of you use Grammarly. It doesn't edit your book, because sometimes people think that, oh, I have Grammarly, so that's fine, my book is edited. Grammarly only helps you to actually present your manuscript in a better way to whoever will be evaluating it. But it's a very important tool, and I use it every single day. But it does not replace the editors, not in any particular way. As I said earlier on, technology is about enabling you to do your job better, but not replacing the people who actually do the job better. What opportunities do we have that we can use for leveraging technology? There are several opportunities that exist as far as technology is concerned. One is the fact that you can actually tailor content. One of the greatest enablers of publishing is actually using technology to tailor content for impact. What do I mean by that? As you look at the life that we are living today, people enjoy things that are personalized. It's always amazing to me when I've given people a gift that is personalized, whether it's a notebook or whether it's a pen or it is a mug and it has their name. It's amazing how much that is appreciated, because somebody feels this is mine. And think of publishing in the same way. When I am able to personalize content to an audience, then they feel connected. I'll give you an example. And I encourage you, if you have an opportunity to visit the Bible Society, stand there and just see the example that I'm going to give. You'll find Africa Women Devotional Bible there on their table. This Bible, we managed to get 270 women from across the continent of Africa, from 25 different countries, to participate in the writing of the content that is there. It is amazing that when that Bible was published, and we gave each one of them a Bible that had their name, not just on the cover, but on the presentation page. Right from the printers, it was personalized. They were able to put their name. I mean, these women were so happy on social media. They have been the first marketers of this Bible. And by God's grace, 20,000 copies of the first print run were done. Now we are doing another print run of about 30,000 copies of that Bible. Why? Because of simply personalizing it. Now, the challenge we have, thank you. The challenge we have is personalizing print copies is a bit more difficult and more technical than you can think. But guess what? It's such an easy thing when you use technology. So easy to use technology to personalize, especially as you think of artificial intelligence, as you think of data analytics. All these are tools that are available that can make it easier. I know that Ramon and I were in a conversation, and I'm sure that will be coming soon, if possibly in the new year. We were talking about a webinar that will be able to present all the AI tools that are available for writers, for publishers, and be able to demonstrate how you can use them to your advantage. And using AI tools does not mean it replaces your ideas and your thoughts. It simply means being in a position to use them to your advantage. So that webinar will be coming. Think about some of the recommendation engines that are there. I'm sure some of you have shopped in Amazon, and you buy a book, and what happens? Then the next thing they tell you is, these other books would be of interest to you. How did they get to know what will be of interest to you? And more often than not, they actually get it right. All, if you are not on Amazon, all of you, I'm sure, are on YouTube. All right? So you watch a video on YouTube, and so be careful what you watch, because they will recommend other things that are closely related. And they keep a track of those things. And that's how they get to know what might be of interest to you. Right? And so when you think about that, the recommendation engines, they are there, and you can use those tools. And they will help your book to be discovered and more people to actually have access. Some of the people who have reached out to me, it's because they bought a book that was, then my book came as a recommendation. And we can talk about that in detail, how you can achieve that, because that's not possible in the few minutes that are remaining on this presentation. But also, as you think about tailoring content, you have to think about its impact on readers. That personalized content has such a profound impact on readers. One, it enhances their reading experience by presenting to them content that matters to them. The moment you receive that personalization, it's because you have an interest in that area. And that enables you to get content that is of great value to you. It will, of course, save you time so that you don't have to worry thinking and searching. You're able to find recommended books that you can use. The second on that screen talks about immersive storytelling. And if there is an opportunity that exists in the world today, it is the whole area of storytelling. I have a friend of mine who at the beginning of the year, of course, when ChatGPT, how many of you have heard of ChatGPT? If you have not heard about it, it's fine. It's not a crime. In fact, maybe it's better that you haven't heard about it. One of my friends who came and told me, now what's going to happen with publishers? Because with ChatGPT, I mean, you can sit down there and you can get your book written in whatever minutes that he talked about. And I said, I'm not actually worried. In fact, I'm very happy for ChatGPT because it separates the jokers and the serious people. But I think besides that joke of the serious and the non-serious people is the fact that if you think about it, all these platforms actually allow you different ways of enhancing your content. Things like doing outlines for your book, you can easily achieve that because you can get lots of ideas. But I told him the only day I'll be worried is when ChatGPT will be able to write my story. And I bet you that is not happening anytime soon. So if you are used to writing the how to do books, you are in trouble because anybody can go in and say how to do this and they will get all the answers. But nobody can tell your story. And so when you connect your story to what you write, stories of people making the book alive with experiences that are lived, that is timeless. It's not going to be replaced by any of these technology platforms. So think about the books that you read. And I want you to think of two things. I want you to think about what we call augmented reality, where you basically use real-life experiences, but are layered into the books that you do. Now, let me try and explain that a little bit. Some of you have seen the book that is at the back there called Days of Light in Darkness, simply telling the role of the church in South Sudan and how the church has been able to survive years and years of violence and all that has been happening in that country. And this was influenced because, as Mary Klein said, I went there with her, listened to some of the stories, and I said, I have read so much from BBC, from CNN, and all these international papers, but I had stories that I never read about. And I asked the people, including Archbishop Joseph, I said, when are you going to tell these stories? And that's how the conversation started. Fast track to the moment when we were able to go there and we sat down with these bishops and the clergy who told their stories, and all those stories are on, they were taped, they are on video. And so we were able to generate a book out of that content, but we have enormous amount of content or video that is lying there that resulted into that book. And what we are going to do in the next phase of that book is that we're actually creating QR codes in that book. And so when someone tells the story of their own personal loss, if you have that book, just like you used a QR code to scan this, you will be able to scan that QR code and you will be able to listen to that testimony live from the person who told the story. That confirms the story that is not, I didn't make it up, because some of them are talking about very painful losses that they went through. Loss of family, loss of property, loss of all those things. Sometimes it's easier to exaggerate when you write. But when people connect with the person who told the story and they see them interacting with you, it makes a big difference. And that's the next phase, where it doesn't cost you anything. The person will still have access to a print book, but they will also be able to hear that person say. And I'm looking at all the books that all of you have done, those who have done books, and I'm thinking, you can tell your story. You can include that as part of your content, and it enables people to engage with you as an author. The opportunities for augmented reality are real. They are not going to cost you nothing because YouTube will not charge you anything to put your videos there. You take advantage, and that's why I talked about leveraging technology. But I have QR codes that connects. And it's amazing how people are able to come back and say, oh, I listened to this story. Now, do you have another book? Or can you do this? Can you come and speak on this subject? I'm working with another from Cambodia who is telling his story. And I don't want to preempt the book because it will be out sometimes next year. And this gentleman went through a lot of pain. I mean, when Cambodia was taken over by the Khmer Rouge, the forces, and he was a child soldier, went through, I mean, you can, for those of you who know East Asia a little bit, he was able to move from Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, on foot, and crossing all those big rivers that are there, found himself in Thailand, and eventually into France. One of the things is that in both countries that he was in, both Vietnam and Laos, he actually found himself in jail several times. Not for any crime he committed, but of course for being a foreigner. And of course without documentation, because when you run, you don't carry anything. And one of the prayers he said when he was in one of those jails was he found people struggling with a New Testament. They were kind of fighting for this New Testament because Bibles were banned. I mean, that's communist country. And they were struggling who will be able to read it and hide it. And he prayed a prayer. And he said, Lord, if I get out of this, I'll come back to provide scriptures to these people. And it's amazing how God is faithful, that he went the full cycle. And eventually he found himself working with the United Bible Societies. And they sent him to Cambodia to restart the publishing work right there. Then that led him to then go back to Laos, to Vietnam, and amazing stories. And those are things. So you can imagine if he's telling that story, you're reading the book, but also seeing the person telling you their story. Amazing information. And so augmented reality. But then we also have virtual reality. I don't know how many of you have gone to YouTube and looked out. If you haven't been to the Bible land, Israel, right now you can actually, there is enough videos that out there that will give you a virtual reality. You'll have a real experience. You'll only feel like you are actually there. And sometimes that is very helpful for storytelling. Now, technology can replace many other things, but like I said, it will not replace your own story. But one of the other advantages or opportunities that exists is that when you are leveraging technology, you can amplify what we call marginalized voices. There are many people with great stories that have not been told, and nobody will tell them because they are not commercially viable. The example I've given is the stories from South Sudan. If you were to tell them simply because of the money that is involved in it, I tell you what, those stories would never have been told. But by telling those stories, it's created an opportunity, and ECSS Life Publishers was born. And now, people like Bishop Zechariah, who himself is an academician and a published author, is saying, I don't have to go and look for a publisher in the United States or in Kenya. I have my own local publishing house that can do that. The ECSS, as a church, now they are saying, we don't have to look for another publisher. But that would not have happened were it not for that humble beginning of telling of those stories. Technology enables us to amplify marginalized voices. And we have lots of those marginalized voices today. I find joy personally as a personal agenda to amplify those marginalized voices. People will never have an opportunity. And I believe I was talking to Bishop Leswit yesterday, and I said, I moved away from individual writing, and I have so many book ideas that I would love to write, but I moved from individual writing to what I call cooperative writing, where I bring in people who have ideas, and you possibly have seen 2 or 3 books that are of that kind on my table there, just a few that I was able to bring about. Because time is not on our side, I want to say this. When you are using technology, it requires some responsibility on your part as a publisher or as an author. So what is your responsibility as you think about technology and how to use it? I think 2 things that stand out for me. One is you have to use technology in an ethical way. I think it would be inappropriate and not right for you to go to ChatGPT, type questions there, pick the content, and put it out there and say published or written by so and so. That's not ethical because those are not your ideas. And in fact, right now, I think with the Copyright Office in the US, there's a whole debate about what they can actually copyright. Are they able to copyright content that is generated by ChatGPT? And should they copyright it to you or to the platform creators? That conversation is going there because if you're using ChatGPT, you really are not the creator because we copyright content that you have created. I think for Christian publishers and writers, the element of ethics, and ethics especially in the whole of the publishing chain. And when I talk about ethics, I think I've seen many unethical practices in my 20 years plus. Ethics is not just about copying the content. I remember many years back in my local church where I said to my local church, I said, you cannot afford to photocopy any book because sometimes the argument was, we only need 3 copies. And so we need to just make copies of them. It's easier anyway. And I said, that's unethical. You are stealing people's information. They have not given you right to be able to make those copies. And so the ethics of publishing is something that we must be able to live on. And then secondly, we have to think about authenticity and integrity. How authentic are we? And that's why I said if you focus on your stories, if you integrate your own personal stories into your writing, you don't have to worry about authenticity because your story is your story. And everybody, each one of us, has a story to tell. And Rose, just like Archbishop, if my time is up, please back on me and I'll stop. Because as you realize, I enjoy these conversations on technology, and so I can say many things. But we want to be authentic. When I talk about opportunities that we can leverage as far as publishing is concerned, allow me to share with you just some few examples that you might know already of, that you possibly can be able to see, how people are using technology to spread the message of hope. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Project Gutenberg ebooks. Project Gutenberg ebooks, it's a library of over 70,000 free ebooks. You just log in there, you search for whatever book you want, and you will find it, and you'll be able to read it for free. It's leveraging technology to get to as many people as you can. And the more people are realizing technology is an opportunity, the more they are doing everything to leverage on that. What about the Christian classics? Either real library that brings Christian classic books to life. There are some of those old books, Smith Wigglesworth and many others that you might have been looking for that either inspired you and you're thinking, I would want to give it to somebody or read it. Because books have feet, so they have a way of moving from your shelf and you cannot find a print copy anymore. That platform will give you so many of those classics. Again, they are available for free. You can download them at will. But I also thought that it's good for me to put another example, and this might be of interest to people who are in the blogging community. And there are many others. Wattpad is not one of them. I don't actually use it myself, but I think it's one of them that I thought it connects a global community of about 85 million readers and writers just throughout the power of the story. Can you imagine 85 million people connected through that platform? If you can be connected there and become one of those voices, you can imagine what that would do for you. So think of those. But let me try and give you 2 practical examples of initiatives that I'm involved in of using technology, because I think it's easier for me to talk about Project Gutenberg, and it's possible for me to talk about Etheril and all those others. But I'll give you 2 examples. One is a platform that is only a couple of months ago. It's on Facebook. It's a Facebook community. We call it LittAfrica. And I put a QR code there. If you have any interest, you are more than welcome, but not obliged to do it. As you can see, we have about 6,000, almost 6,600 people now from across the entire continent who are connected. And we are looking for a way of connecting African Christian leaders across the continent. We are saying we are such a community, we are such a force to reckon with. But because we are not together, we don't operate together, then nobody will ever feel our force. And so if we can find a way of coming together, not to sell anything to anyone, but just to encourage each other. As you can see there, it says we are creating a community to equip, to mentor, and to resource. That's what basically we are trying to do. The whole idea is just to make sure that we can resource, we can equip people. It's amazing the kind of people we have discovered on this platform for the number of months that it's been in operation. And hopefully by the end of the year, we are targeting that at least by end of 2023 that we are in, we'll have 10,000 people by end of this year. And we are looking to those numbers to grow in the following years as we generate content. Again, just using technology, I have been able to discover people who are doing leadership training in Zimbabwe, in Liberia, in places that I would never have been able to know about those people. And how has this become? Someone who joins, I remember talking to someone in Addis Ababa, a missionary there, and they liked the idea so much, they said, I want to actually now be an ambassador myself and be able to bring others. And indeed, the following month, the engagement levels just for Addis Ababa, for Ethiopia in general, went much higher as we were looking at the analytics. So that is just an opportunity that I can talk about using technology to connect people. The other initiative that I want to talk about is a web platform, because what I talked about is a Facebook platform. As you know, with all these social media platforms, the content you post there is not your content, it's actually their content. I don't know how many of you know that as one reality. So you don't own that content. Once you post it on Facebook, it's Facebook's content. And so when you don't have your own platform, you are not in control. Tomorrow you can wake up and Facebook decides they don't want to be Facebook again, they are Y, now that X is taken. And you never know what happens. So we are trying to use Facebook to connect with all these people, but we are creating a home where we'll connect all these Christian leaders in one platform. And I don't want to talk about the platform because that's not what I'm here, but I want you to realize, I just used one of the pages where we have something we are calling Africans for Africa books. And what we intend to do with that page is, and I invite you if you are not here, and you want to have your books featured, it will be for free. We want to ensure discoverability of all published African Christian authors on the platforms. We will be able to have them there, available for free, just to let the world know that Africa has a voice. And we want to be able to bring that voice to the world and say, here when you log in here, you can discover all these voices that are there and in the different areas they are speaking about, without any discrimination. And we are just at the pilot stage, so if you log in, you possibly will see that there is content to be put there. So I'm sharing this with you as a preliminary. We are hoping that it will actually be live by the end of this month. So now we are just piloting and testing it. But I just want you to see the opportunities that we have. I want to appreciate one thing, that as you talk about technology, it poses several challenges. But thankfully, all the challenges that we encounter, they have solutions. I've listed there 4 challenges that you'll encounter as far as technology is concerned and as you leverage on technology. One is content overload. I know the moment I said Gutenberg has 70,000 ebooks, you are thinking, wait a minute, where do I begin? Already you are feeling overwhelmed even before you go to that website. And that is why the analytics and the artificial intelligence becomes helpful, because then you don't have to think of the 70,000, you need to think of what's of interest to you. And by the way, when you log in there and they know what interest, if you possibly type in something on prayer, chances are they'll only give you all the books that are available there on prayer. So you can basically be able to see what is the area of interest. Of course, maintaining ethical standards, I've talked about that. It's quite a challenge. And when we think about this, especially for content overload, we have to think of curating and promoting quality over quantity. I've seen so many others who are interested to be counted to say, I have 20 books, I have 50 books. But do those books make any value to anyone? I've seen others who have only one book, but the impact it has had is amazing. I mean, somebody asked me yesterday, how many books have you written? And I said, I've not kept account. I know there are over 10, but there are some of those books that have not done well. And I must be able to start and say, maybe I didn't possibly think about who my audience was. But there are some of those books that have significantly surprised me. And some of them translated into a couple of languages. Did I go out on the plan to translate them? The answer is no. Somebody discovered that content, realized it was great, and they said, can we have this book, can we translate it? And by the grace of God, it has gone to places that are never intended. So think about quality rather than quantity. When we talk about quality, look at the quality of publishing, the editorial, the whole process. I tell people this every time I speak to an audience about books. I say, good books is a combination of two things. For those who didn't like mathematics, I say it's a formula, but you don't have to worry about formula. It's a simple formula. That a good book must, first of all, it starts with good content. So you must write good content. It must be attractive to the target audience that you are. But the second element of a good book is that it must be well curated. And curation here, I'm talking about two types of curation. The editorial part, making sure that that message is communicated well, but also the design and layout. That is attractive, that I want to pull that book from the shelf. I can tell you as you walk around those tables there are some books that will just attract you. Even if you didn't want to stop there, you'll be attracted to stop and see what's in this book. Why? Because the cover design is looking good and attractive. Now, I've been disappointed sometimes where I've seen great covers only to realize that the content is nothing that what I was expecting. But it's two elements, good content and good packaging. You must think of inclusivity and diversity and thinking about technological advancement and how you are able to adapt. You must think of adaptation. And then finally, I needed to talk about this in 2 minutes. As you think about the future of publishing, as you think about writing as authors, think about those 5 elements that I've talked about there. Think about how you can introduce interactive and immersive experiences in your writing. You will never get it wrong. People want to connect with the stories of real people. When you talk about the pain that you've gone through, people want to connect with that. But if you tell me 5 ways of making $1 million, okay, sounds great. I want to make $1 million, but you need to prove to me that you use those 5 ways to make the million yourself before I can listen to you. But when you talk to me about an experience you have gone, it's your unique experience. And it's only you can tell your experience. Think about how you can enhance personalization. And we can talk about this, like I said, over coffee or any other opportunities. There are so many opportunities that you can personalize content. Think about how you can use AI to be able to create content. And like I said, I'm sure Ramon is working up something. There should be a webinar coming up next year very early on AI tools that are available. And we want to be able to equip you with those tools so that you know, if I'm doing writing, what tools would be of help to me as I generate my content? If I'm doing editing, what tools do I use? If I'm in the area of design, I mean, right now, there are platforms where if you cannot find a photo in some of the shops, platforms that sell photos, you literally can describe the photo you want and AI will generate it for you. So you don't need an artist for some of the basic things that you need. But it can't do everything. There are some complex things it will never do. Thinking about that. Thinking about how you can introduce gamification, especially for those who are using learning platforms. A great way of doing that. We do have a platform that we train all Bible Society's publishing staff, and it's amazing. Just by using gamification, it has the level of engagement that we have on that platform. It's amazing. I wish I had time just to show you that. And then global storytelling. Stories that go across not just continents. Not countries, but they go across continents. I was impressed and amazed at the same time when my 3 leadership books, leadership foundations, found themselves translated into Nepalese. Never in the world had I ever imagined that somebody would find an interest in Nepal to be able to use those books. But they are there. I've never been to Nepal. Hopefully one day I'll find myself there. But that's what we mean by taking advantage of the global storytelling. I really thank you so much for allowing me to throw out some of these ideas to you. I pray that you are not overwhelmed by the many things I said. But if you are overwhelmed, just remember that I said adapt slowly, meet your audience needs, but don't live in the old technology that's already outdated. Find your space in the new publishing space, and your voice of hope will find relevance even as you continue your writing and publishing. And I pray that you will grow in that space, and may the Lord richly bless you. If you want to hear more, please join me in the workshop. We will have further conversations, and may the Lord bless you. And thank you again for listening to me.